My name is Glenn Joseph Torline. I was born in Spurville, Kansas, April 2nd, 1934. My full name is Glenn Joseph Paul Torline. What did I want to be when I grew up? I had no idea. I was born and raised on a farm near Windhorst, Kansas, and went to school at Windhorst. Graduated from high school there in Windhorst. Played sports, all the sports I was involved with. My childhood was one of, we were taught to work, and really was glad I had that education because one of the questions you have here is, what is your bucket list? Well, my bucket list is one that I never want to retire. I want to be active my whole life. I went to college first for 2 years at St. Mary of the Plains in Dodge City, and then I transferred because they were giving up sports, and I played in football, basketball, and baseball, and I wanted to continue with that. I and Marvin Hattrop, a cousin of mine, were at St. Mary's, and we were kind of the pets of the school. Everybody knew us, and basically the nuns gave us advantage of everything going because they knew Windhorst. So is that school still standing? I'll say with Windhorst, no, it was demolished, but the church is still there. What brought me to Spurville? Well, let me finish up. Then when I graduated or went to St. Mary of the Plains, then I transferred to St. Benedict's College in Atchison, Kansas, and then it later went to Benedictine College, and it is a very outstanding Benedictine run school, and I think right now there are over 2,000 students there. I'm not sure I'd have to count, but I've got four of my sons that went to Benedictine, and my wife went to the Mount. There was two schools there, Mount St. Scholastica and Benedictine College, and that's where I met my wife. She was a piano major, and I think the first pianist graduated from Mount. She was there. We then, when I was at St. Mary's, they had a class, part of a class at school, to where they tried to match you up with what you wanted to do in your life, whether it wanted to be a religious, whether you wanted to be a single, or whether you wanted to be married. And I chose to be married, and then I was headed up that portion of students that wanted to be married, which was the majority of them. And that following year, we thought it was so good and whatnot, we decided, or the priest there decided to take this program to Benedictine and see if they could join and do the same things that we were doing. Well, we never went to Benedictine College, but we went to the Mount to give that overview of the program that we were involved. I found out later that I was heading up this class, or whatever you want to call it, and I got there and they were in the gym and all these gals were sitting in there, and was not in the mood to talk to all these girls, and I ended up turning it over to to the priest. And later, my wife told me that she remembered me there. We didn't meet each other until a year later. She was a candidate for queen of Benedictine, and I saw her there the first time. And I don't know if she still I don't know how to say it. She remembers me at that first because she told one of her friends, I wish Father would shut up and let him talk. But then I went back to St. Mary's, and then I transferred to Benedictine. It was called St. Benedict at that time. Now it's Benedictine. The two colleges merged together, and we then I joined the Army, and tried out for the Navy Air Force, which I didn't pass the physical because they had a requirement that your heartbeat had to be so fast, and they couldn't get my heartbeat up fast enough to pass me. But anyhow, then I joined the Army, and went to basic training, and during the basic training, during my, I think it was 2-week break that we had, is when Pat and I got married. She was teaching school in Kansas City, and I was there in the Army. But prior to that, when I got out of school, I went to work for a company here in Spurville called Easy Fold Incorporated, and worked there. But then I got into the Army, and they kept me informed and whatnot. They wanted me back when I got back. So after our marriage, that's where we ended up. Our marriage was kind of different. We had our engagement was one of what they called a solemn engagement, where there are very few, I don't know of anybody that had it, but it's one where we go through all of the things that you really do in a marriage, but we had a very engagement that we're very proud of the way we acted. There was nothing we were ashamed of. That then we got married. She was teaching in Kansas City, but she came out, and my biggest concern was whether she would like this type of country, that because there's not a lot to do here and whatnot. As kind of prior to that, I brought her out to meet my family, and it was one where after I had the empyema, which was the dust pneumonia, they called it empyema there, that the doctor had told my mom that he didn't think that I was going to survive. And so she went to church, and not sure what she said, but I was supposed to be the priest of the family. But when my mom met Pat, she was very impressed with Pat. And so the same way with Dad. I can remember Dad was self-educated. He was extremely intelligent about anything. He got the book of knowledge, and he read that thing backwards and forwards and whatnot. He knew anything and traveled. His interests were in farming, but he had a weak heart, and he couldn't physically do a lot of the farming that was needed, and that was brought up by my older brothers and me. Did most of the farming at that time. I then worked at the name of the company I started with, Easy Fold. They made basketball backstops. They had a patent on it. There's two individuals involved in it. And when I got back to go to work there, the two of them couldn't get along. And they decided then to sell Easy Fold, and they sold it to Brunswick, who was made bleachers. And they wanted me to join their company somewhere in Illinois. Forget what town it was in Illinois that they were in. But I decided to stay here. And one of the individuals, the accountant that did the work at EasyFold, knew of a company in Dodge that was looking for somebody to work at a manufacturing company. And I was interviewed by him. It was a small company, very small company. We had like 9 employees that were there. And so they were located in Ensign, Kansas. So I took the job, drove from Spearville to Ensign for 2 years, never missed a day. And then got to where I was kind of heading up the manufacturing end of Speed King, or what we called Slocum. It was called Slocum Manufacturing, what it was called. And then they moved to Dodge when we were about probably 45, 50 people employed, and built a building there in the industrial part of Dodge. And I then headed up the manufacturing of, they changed the name to Slocum to Speed King. And it was very active. We had a lot of growth. Every year we put up another section of a building, and we got to the point to where we had 300 employees. At one point in time, we were the largest employer in Dodge City. We then ran into problems of getting enough people with the growth we were having. And so we decided to try and find places to build. And we found a town in Blackwell, Oklahoma that had lost a company there that wanted to locate us there. So what we did, we looked at it and said, well, we built a building 300 by 300 square foot, and we started to make various products here. We made oil pumping units. We made corn and hay elevators. And at our main plant in Dodge City, we kind of switched from the grain augers to fertilizer handling equipment. And we dealt a lot in stainless steel and whatnot, because fertilizer is very corrosive. And so we grew and grew. We had, as I said, we had up to 300 employees at one time. And in that area, we did hit times where products were slow, the economy slowed down and whatnot. And then it would pick up and we would grow back. That was kind of we had one bay of buildings, and every year we'd add another bay to it. And we had up to 9 bays, and we had our painting department and shipping and receiving. We then started to see the need for getting more sophisticated in our manufacturing processes and whatnot. And I went to school in Boca Raton, Florida for 2 weeks, and my eyes were open of what technology was available and whatnot. And they had a system called IPICS, Industrial Production Inventory Control System. And it was a very complicated thing. I had no idea what I was getting into. But we were one of 3 companies that they wanted to grow into using their software and whatnot. And they had a gentleman in Wichita that came out every week, and we would show the process we had to do for of all the part numbering we had to go through, what it really took it involved. And it took us even until we closed, we weren't finished with all the systems that was needed, because we had a complete inventory control system, and we then started sharing with other manufacturing companies here in Dodge City that to help them get started on the same thing. And there was like 8, 10 different small manufacturers that we worked with and helped to get their system and whatnot involved in it. Basically, Speed King was owned by one man, and he was a very nice boss, and he believed a lot in me, I have to admit. We had a sales department, we had accounting, we had engineering, manufacturing, R&D. So we were pretty well equipped with a full circle of things we had. But with this IPICS, we started with a forecast of what we were going to sell in a period of time. We started what are you going to sell in a year from now? And then you broke it down in 2 months. And so you then start working. That's how we derived how we built our inventory, and off of this forecast that sales had. Sales had to come up with a forecast. And it was really a struggle because we probably had 20 different products that we, from grain augers all the way from 4-inch to 12-inch, and to break them all down into quantities of the 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-inch, the lengths involved. That's just the auger line. And then we'd come out with the belt bear, which was unique. Started with it. It was a tube that had a belt running inside of it, a 10-inch tube, and had a 12-inch belt running inside of it. And it would convey material, fertilizer, and all of this up to a 30-degree angle. And it went over great. And we made it out of stainless steel, and it took the portion of material moving that the grain auger wouldn't do. A grain auger was made of mild steel, and it rusted and nothing flat without stainless. But anyhow, we ended up that the economy turned against us. Farming hit a low level, everything hit a low level, and we started to let people go. Where they first let people go was the lower rung of people, which was mostly manufacturing people that they let go because they didn't want to leave the salespeople go, and the ones that were in the office and whatnot. It got to the point to where the sales didn't come back as we anticipated. And so we got with a bank in Dallas that financed our inventory to goods that we had built up and whatnot. They would finance, I think, like 80% of our cost to it. And it just gradually went down and down because the sales just didn't come back. And it ended up to where the bank couldn't support us anymore, and we went into bankruptcy. And we never did come out of it, but the bank in Dallas, which I had to take care of all the paperwork of the financials that they had and whatnot. I worked for them very close, along with all the manufacturing that I had with. But they came out, and because we couldn't make payroll, we couldn't do anything, and the bank wouldn't loan us any money. So they came out and plastered on the door, bankruptcy, and so I was about the only one the bank would talk to, and this went on for about 4 or 5 months, and I got they were trying to sell the company somewhere, but I think manufacturing, at that time, everybody was slow, and nobody wasn't ready to take us on or anything, because we were basically one of the larger manufacturers companies in this area. And the bank had me, I told the bank that if we were ever going to come back, we had to maintain our product line. We had to do the service parts. We had to do whatnot to do this. And so we devised a way to where we would make parts available to our dealers and dealerships that, and we would manufacture. We started out with, I think, 12 people that we hired back. And I ran it, and we all decided to work for $5 an hour. And we gradually brought it back to where we paid back all the wages and the vacation time. We gradually got that all paid back, which was unbelievable in probably 9 months. And so my main concern, or the bank's main concern, was find a buyer for the company. And I was aware of Crustbuster, who was here in Spearville, and there were several people that looked at us and whatnot, and would make an offer to the bank and whatnot, but so I ended up with Crustbuster buying us out. And we had a plant there in Dodge City, and they had a plant here in Spurville. And Crustbuster wanted me to run the Dodge City plant, and they were going to run theirs and try to combine the two and whatnot. And which we did for about, I don't know, a year, and I couldn't see any end to this as far as I was concerned. And so I turned it over to them and I quit. And so that's where it ended up. And I, at the time, in the meantime, I was starting to get involved in farming. And I would farm at night and go to work in the daytime. And so then when I got out, I went full-time into farming. And that's kind of where I am today. I am now involved with farming, but I do the light work like grain cart driving, truck driving, but I still could run combines and whatnot, but I'd like to, but Pat and I, we went on probably 8, 9 cruises that we went on in our lifetime, and we enjoyed it very much. So I think this pretty well ends what I got.
What do you remember about growing up in the 30s as far as the dust and all that stuff? Do you remember much about that?
In the 30s, well, my sister and I both got empyema, and she was a year and a half older than I was. She got over it real fine, but at that particular time, our windows and everything was with wet sheets and whatnot. My crib was a wet sheet over it to keep the dust out. But I still got the scar where they took the rib out to drain me when I was 2 years old. As I said, I don't remember anything about it, but I was a pretty sick boy. And the doctor didn't think I was going to make it. But I did. I remember in childhood a lot of the things. I had a brother, older brother, Harold, who was 4 or 5 years older than I was. We kind of teamed up. We did trapping. I'd love to go with him, and I would carry a gunny sack and carry the skunks back. And we walked a lot. I can remember the steam engines that my dad did use the horse and plow. He walked behind that with a horse plow. At that time, you know, if you had 80 acres, you could support a family, I guess. But we had a big garden. And we raised a lot of chickens and milking. I think we milked up to 20 cows at that time. And the hogs would go with it. When I was in sports at Windhorst, we were a very athletic team. We excelled in everything in football. I think in my 4 years in high school, we lost one game and tied one game. In the same way with baseball, we were very good baseball. We didn't have a gym at that time, and we had an outdoor platform that we practiced on, but we didn't excel in basketball until we got the gym, which I was about ready to leave at that time. The Dirty 30s, I can't really remember a lot about it, but when I was going to St. Mary the Plains, we had dust storms come up, and I can remember that it was terrible. I was involved with janitorial work. That's how I got the money to go to St. Mary the Plains. I janitorized, did the floors of the college, and the 30s were tough to survive. A lot of people, I would say, I don't know, probably close to 50% of the farmers had to leave. They just couldn't make it. And there are times when you couldn't see the hand in front of your face. I don't know, they say the cows went to come in, time for the milk, and chickens went to bed to roost. But then when this cloud of dirt come in, it just, how we survived it, I don't know. Childhood there, Christmas was always a big occasion. I can remember my first Christmas present. I can remember I got a book named Bambi. I could remember reading it behind the coal stove we had there, and then we always got a big sack of oranges and apples, peanuts, and all kinds of nuts that we traded with each other, what we liked and what we didn't like. So what else have I left out, you think?
Oh, sounds pretty good to me.
As I said, I helped raise money for the new rest home here in Spearville. I was on the first Recreation Commission. I was president of that when they first formed it, and we built a swimming pool. We had baseball was a famous sport that we had in the summertime. Everybody played baseball, and I think we had like 8 fields that we had with kids, and another person involved in it was Herb Greenstreet. You probably heard of that name. Well, I hired him, and he had a job where he could be away a lot, so he became very active in it. And we made the park. We bought the ground and made the park, and then we got the park and we planted trees in it. And then we started with tennis courts and swimming pool. And now I was there for, I think, 22 years. And it is growing quite now. We got football field. It's the best it can get. A baseball field with lights and whatnot. I have been involved with hospice for 22 years. It's one of the things that I really enjoy, and I'm still involved with it, but I'm kind of getting through a cellulitis, a disease I had here the last 9 months, and I'm having a heck of a time getting over it, but it slowed me down a little, but I'm active in the church.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, Glenn.